rover, this whole world over.
And the therapist. We have mentioned several times, and we'll be mentioning over and over again, those 4 words. What upholds your existence?
As happy as me, you'll never see.
Aim to be as selfless as possible. To quote Tucker, laugh at your own suffering, but weep at the pain of others. Once again, Bob Embry was a perfect example of that. Bob laughed at his own suffering, but did weep the pain of other people. To be the first person to hold someone and cry with them over what they were feeling, but never about himself. And I think this is another important part of language that Tucker developed. Laugh at your own suffering, but weep at the pain of others. Learn and practice the art and science of saying yes. One of the best ways of having leverage in your favor throughout life and to build relationships that are solid is to learn how to say yes as opposed to no or maybe. Going back to that story about 120%, learn how to do that. Learn how to give and give and give without thought of anything being returned. And you will find that you're getting back more than you could ever imagine. Say yes. Keep saying yes. I know it's not easy. It was not easy for me. It took me decades to fight through that one, through all my demons who wanted to pull me down and say no, or I don't want to, or I don't feel like it, or what did you give me today? I say yes over and over and over again every day. And if I feel that tug of no or maybe, I have to stop and be very objective and ask myself, does it uphold my existence? Is there any real reason for my going along with that negativity? What's stopping me from saying yes? Is it a matter of time?
I think that it's a bit complex here, because we say, learn how to say yes in a way, but then on the other hand, what if you're in that relationship you were talking about, where you're not getting what you're getting, but then you're giving all you can?
Then you recognize it and acknowledge it. The point is, by giving and saying yes, if you happen to find yourself in a situation where it's not there for you, you're not getting anything back, all the yeses are not adding up to a response from the other person, then you make a change. You'll make a move. But more often than not, it'll work the other way. If you have a committed relationship, for instance, and you work at the yes and the yes, you'll build upon those yeses and you'll be getting it back in return. If it's not there, then you've got a problem in the relationship and you acknowledge it. There's something wrong. Jay and Cecily went along for months after that, fighting, raging war with each other. It took them quite a while before they settled down into beginning again to return to that giving, and it worked out fine for them. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but you still have to learn to do it. That's the key. You have to do it no matter what in order to become that kind of a person. Even if you're not getting back. Okay, but now you become a kind, giving, loving person, and quite hopefully you will more than likely meet someone who will be responsive to that. Does that answer that? Again, all of these things you do without expectation, but in the process of doing them, you learn how to do it. You learn how to be a kind, loving person. If Nan were not the woman she was and not responsive, I would feel pain, of course. I'm giving and giving and giving and saying yes and yes and yes, and I'm not getting back. And I'd have to recognize that and deal with it and confront the problem. But again, all things being equal, unless you're in a real bad relationship with someone who really is not going in any direction, doesn't have a path, the chances are great, mathematics being what they are, that that person will respond. They will. I've known few people who do not respond to kindness and thoughtfulness and love. That is not to say there are not people who are bad or even evil. There are some cruds out there, yeah, unfortunately. And when you meet a crud, yeah, you don't climb the cross for them. You don't sacrifice your life for them. You acknowledge that these people are not kind and loving and giving and sincere, and you walk away from that. Absolutely. Be healthy, happy, and fit, always moving onward and upward. Health, happiness, fitness. I submit to you that unless you are fit, you're going to have a hard time making every day a work of art and upholding your existence. Have a very, very difficult time. Every single day I see people who are so unfit and unhealthy and unhappy, and they trudge along day after day like this. And every time I see one of them, I swear I want to just pick them up and shake them and rattle them and say, wake up for God's sake. How can you live this way? How can you just keep moving like a dead body? And it's amazing in our society how many people are like this, and they don't even recognize it, much less acknowledge it. I had a person last week came in to see me, ostensibly to quit smoking, on a cane, barely able to walk, overweight, smoking, forget it, 48, 50 years. I sat with her and I started talking about health in general. And she looked at me and said, well, I think I'm pretty healthy. Kid you not? Well, a lot of people do that. I'm sure you experience this with people. It's amazing how people can be in such terrible condition, so unfit, and yet not recognize it, much less acknowledge it and say, I've got a bad problem here, I've got to do something. You cannot uphold existence and make your days works of art if you are not fit. Poor mathematics. Poor mathematics. Everything is going against you. The leverage is not in your favor. Where is your now? In your medicine cabinet? Is that your now? In your hospital bills? In falling apart physically because you're unwilling to do the things you need to do to be fit? You must be fit. If you're not, you've got to deal with it and change. In 2 weeks we're going to do breathing and stretching for life. It's one of my favorite classes of all the things I teach. I really love it so much. I get so much out of it every time I do it. And yet I look at people in every class who are so unfit. And they go through the class and they enjoy it. It's like you enjoy the stretching earlier. We were doing that, a couple minutes of fun. They go through it. At the end of the class, they're smiling and everything else. But I always know, those people, those who are the most unfit, will not do anything. Those people they'll say, oh yes, it's great, it feels good, and I know I should do it, but they will not do it. It's almost as if they've accepted their negative mathematics in life and the situation that they're not even going to give it the barest that they will do it. They fight against it completely. And how can those people make every day a work of art? How can they uphold their existence? They cannot. Embrace life with its problems, conflicts. Turn fear to excitement. We have to do it that way. As I've said many times, unless you are living in a cave in some monastery, hiding away from life, and even those people, by the way, suffer conflicts and pain just as much as anyone else in this broader kind of living situation. But unless you're doing that, you've got to embrace life. You've got to really look at life with all of its problems as it happens and still love life, love existence, and do everything in your power to make your days a work of art. My recent months and years have had a mixture of the best of times and the worst of times. As I've shared with you, some some of the saddest moments of my life I've experienced in the last several years. And yet I'm looking at you and saying, I've never been happier. Never been happier, in spite of all of those painful things, because I do embrace life more and more. So you have to be thinking along those terms. You can't be just aware of the painful, of the conflict, of the obstacle, the difficulty. You've got to turn all those things around, turn your life around, live in the now, have a now, uphold existence, and make every day a work of art. Love before you speak of love. Thakur's wonderful, another piece of language from Thakur, which says it so perfectly. Love before you speak of love. That's coupled with being kind, coupled with all the good things you should be doing, coupled with saying yes. Love before you speak of love. It is so easy to say I love you and mean nothing. It could be a lovely phrase, something you want to get across to someone, I love you. But if you are not doing the things you need to do to make that love meaningful, then it's simply empty words. Love, the action of love before you speak of love, is what Thakur always spoke of. The action of love, leading to Balavashi, I live in your good, the Hindu term for love. Not just I love you, but I live in your good. If I live in your good, that means action. What am I doing to live in your good? I bought something online a couple weeks ago, some pillows that are supposed to be very good if you're driving a lot, to put on you. So I got one for Nan. So last night when I got home, I went to her car and I put this pillow in. Didn't tell her anything about it. So this morning when I got here, I have a phone call from her. What is that strange thing sitting in my car? I live in your good by the thought. Action. Love before you speak of love. The doing. And again, to go back to that question you asked, which is right on target, does that mean you're going to get in return? Necessarily? You don't know. Maybe not. Does that prevent you from being kind, learning to give? No. Are you not a better person in the process of doing that? Of course. You're a much stronger person, a much healthier person, just as Bob Embry was with all of his suffering, with that, plate in his skull. He still was able to do it. At the end of your day, meditate and reflect on what you are thankful for, who you are grateful to, and joyously look forward to the next day. Don't just end the day, plop down, go to sleep. Go over the day carefully. Reflect on what you're thankful for, who you're thankful to, who you feel gratitude toward, and plan your next day. Work at it. Theme, plot, resolution, just like the actor works on it. Build it from moment to moment to moment. Leverage works in your favor that way, and over a period of time, you begin to accumulate all of the benefits of these things. It's a whole general outlook on life, involving hundreds and hundreds of details, thousands of moments, hundreds of thousands of experiences, and building upon them every day. Starting with the idea from the moment you get up, making today a work of art, upholding existence. Always remember, one of the basic underlying principles of this entire concept is always to integrate all of these things. And that takes consistency and mindfulness, and then it starts to accumulate. Builds and builds and builds. We don't see that mathematics because we don't think of it. We're not trained to recognize mathematics in human life in that way. Questions?
I was just saying, there's a great balance between too much structure and not enough. And I think that's a very fine line when you talk about planning a day and things. If you're not allowing an openness for the flexibility for that art to be in the day. I mean, because that could be from a chance meeting with a stranger, and you can kick up a conversation and it can change everything. So that to me is kind of how I like to be out there, always being open for the possibility of that dance with the universe, whatever.
Wonderful, wonderful. Balance and adjust, of course. Be open at every moment to any change that might affect your life. Yeah, you might have a clear plan of the day and suddenly bump into someone and bingo, everything is changed. That's wonderful. I couldn't agree more with that whole idea. When you said it, it made me so aware how that's affected my life, how I've gone in one direction, suddenly this drops in and boom. I was making a movie in Hollywood, and we'd worked very, very hard. And we had a good director, we had a good solid, plan for everything. And suddenly someone comes into my office and says, Nickolas, is it called? This guy's really been bugging me to speak to you. He's called for weeks, and I put him off. And I don't know what he wants, but he's something about the movie. Would you please get him off my back? Talk to him. All right, hello, yeah. What's, okay. What is it? You're a physicist? Yeah? And you have an idea for my movie? Oh, okay. What's your idea? Oh. That's how, I like that. I like that very much. Well, suddenly, not only does the movie take a turn, but my life is about to go over here. Immense changes took place because of that phone call, totally unplanned. And unbeknownst to us, what was lurking back there was disaster, catastrophe, literally. But yes, you have to be open to it. That's part of being creative, absolutely. So, yeah. At any moment, be ready for that change, that new thing in life, and be open to it. Let your instincts be alive and follow it. How many people who experience things like that, by the way, where suddenly out of nowhere, bingo, something happens to pull you right.
I think when you pay attention too, I think it happens more.
Instinct, when you follow.
It's like you build that muscle or something.
It is a muscle. It is an organ. Instinct is as real as your eyes, your nose, your ears, and your other sense organs. And if you follow it, it can do wonderful things. And in fact, change your life. Looking back on what I just said a minute ago, disaster, catastrophe. We got through it. Yeah, it was a disaster. It was a catastrophe. Lost everything, literally lost everything we owned. Every single thing gone. And then we get back here with nothing. And I pick up the phone and I call my dearest friend Neil. And he'd already gotten wind of some of it. And he says, I better tell you quickly, Nickolas, because you have to know this. Our dear friend Ed Spencer died last week. So now on top of it, we find out that one of our primary people in our lives has died. Take that in. Nickolas, sorry, got another bit of news. What? I've been diagnosed with terminal cancer, so I've got about 2 years to live. That was 17 and a half years ago. Neil was alive and well, and kicking and as ever. And we got through the catastrophe, worked through everything. Spence is very much alive to me. I meditate with him every morning. So even those things that turn out to be huge problems, crises, will lead you along in life. You'll still be moving along and you'll still be growing, and that's going to get you to the next step of your entire life that still upholds existence. We'll hear from everyone else, please, at any level regarding any of this. Would there be questions or thoughts on it and how you can do it? And I'd like to know any additional things beside this that enter into it. You were going to say something a minute ago.
Yeah, that was, in fact, along the lines of, I think your name, what Deborah mentioned, that even though you can go ahead and plan everything, there are things that can happen, but then also take it to a different level and talk about the fact that if you were to actually follow the structure and actually go through with it, there has to be some level of high commitment in a way, right? I mean, it's literally giving yourself to something that you believe in and you believe is going to give you something good in return, and end up doing it. And unfortunately, many people, they may jump on it and say, oh, this is excellent, they'll do it for 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden, they go back to the old routine. And then it's all forgotten. Yeah. I think the level of commitment really is what makes the difference. But and I'll throw something in there. Personally, all sorts of physical challenges with a number of surgeries, knee replacement and stuff like that. But one of the things that I have to do every day is exercise. I have to do it every single day. And I know that if I don't do it, I'm going to get all stiff. I won't be able to probably walk or do anything. But it's one of those things that is just such an intense part of my life that regardless of whether I'm going to do it at 3 in the morning or having to get up 2 or 3 hours later, that routine is never broken. If I'm going to be late to something, then so I'm going to be late. That has to happen every day. So in a way, I kind of see this as being something that if it's really important to somebody, then they'll do it. And if it isn't important, chances are they're going to be like the people you were talking about. They'll just ignore whatever symptoms or whatever things they believe in and move on with their lives and just let it go.
Which takes up better than 80% of our society, unfortunately. And I'm being conservative when I say 80% of people do not have a commitment to their lives and to what upholds their existence. In fact, they're going in the opposite direction. They're going to hell on a rocket ship and nothing is going to stop them. And you're referring to the word commitment. Absolutely, to be redundant, that word is so important. Merely making decisions is not enough. We make decisions constantly and we don't follow them. We break promises. We are not sincere to ourselves and other people. And we must be committed to what we're doing. Absolutely committed. Every time you make a commitment, it's your personal contract with yourself, an honor code that you're writing out with yourself. And anytime you break a commitment, you're dishonoring yourself. That's what it really comes down to. And if you're doing that, obviously it does not uphold your existence, and obviously you're not going to be making days works of art, and you're going to fall into the category of those people who are not moving ahead in life. The exact opposite. Yeah, the word is so important. Entrenched in change and health is the word commitment. It must be. You must think that way every day with everything you're working on, no matter what it is. If it's a major thing or a minor thing, your commitment must be there. Anything less takes away from the uphold of your existence and deprives you of the leverage you need in life. And your mathematics will remain that way as it is with 80% or better of the people. It's that to me is perhaps the most painful thing and the greatest tragedy, that so many people walk around that way and live that way and will not apply any of the things that they should be doing.
Because it's easy. Because it's easy.
It's, habit. It's easy. Absolutely. Even a disaster zone for some person can be comfortable. And people keep on doing it. Like that woman who walked in to quit smoking, she thinks she's healthy. She's dying on her feet, can barely walk, and she thinks she's healthy. Easy. And she walks away thinking, I'm okay, Jack, I'm all right, no problem. Part of it is simple ignorance. When we're recognizing the true nature of our society and what goes on with people, by and large, and I think every person who's ever sat with me, I've said this to them from the first 10 minutes of them knowing me, are you going to be part of that 80% of ignorance, or are you going to be smart? Are you going to use common sense? And of course, most people would like to tell themselves they're not among those 80% ignorant. But that's not true. It's a lie. If it were true, we would not have the conditions we have in our society. Something is mighty wrong. And ignorance is certainly part of it.
like the fundamental optimism of the philosophy, the fact that we've all got the opportunity to do this. There's nothing holding us back, and the way it works together with the other things that you've been bringing up, your comment about integration. Because when you had mentioned this phrase a number of times ago, I had started with a big sheet of paper and started drawing little pieces of the mosaic, and each day add one piece, just one image that comes to mind. A moth that I saw on a wall, or a bird that I saw kayaking through a canal, and that art is all around us, and it uplifts.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing here that's rocket science, you know? You don't have to have a PhD to understand any of this and to do it, to apply it daily. A child can do it. In fact, we're probably going to go further with a child than with most adults, because a child will use his imagination. Yeah, this is what we should get in childhood. You know? This is what we missed. Instead, we're taught subjects. Rather than integrating all the forces of life, we're taught these subjects, and we're not even told why we're learning them, what use they have in our lives. Whereas this is what we need. I didn't need to learn when Napoleon landed in Waterloo or wherever, at what date, and pass a test about that. I didn't have to know what an adverb or an adjective was. I didn't have to know how to conjugate a Spanish verb. I didn't need those things. I needed the basics, which we don't learn, which is why we are so ignorant. I mean, it is ignorance in that people actually don't have these tools. They don't know about them. What else? Everyone.
I see it within the second thought and trying to get a structure for the life today. On personal, for me, it sometimes has less rigidity and flexibility allows to opportunities and also opportunities to be creative as well. So you go like, I gotta be here this time, that time, and this time. There's no flexibility. And then something goes wrong, the whole world is challenged. And I think it's a great time to bring together coping skills and bring together some creativity and make it, a solution or a positive experience. So I like some of these concepts that you see, like, well, what's going to bring the best outcome, or it's going to give somebody a positive experience while you're trying to struggle to do what you have to do. So these are the destruction and guidance. But what I try to bring out is maybe not so much rigidity, but more flexibility that allows you to have creativity.
I couldn't agree more. That's an acting principle, by the way. People who study acting from a distance and don't understand what the creative aspect is, what's actually taking place when you see something wonderful on stage or in a movie. You think you're just seeing everything as it was, but there's so much creativity and flexibility behind it. Apropos of that, the story I told before about a play that was revived in New York City, The Iceman Cometh. Iceman Cometh had been a very successful play back in the, I think, late 20s, early 30s. And then a brilliant group of people decided to redo this play in New York City back in the late 50s, early 64, 65, they decided to. In fact, they built a new theater off Broadway just to stage this mammoth production of Iceman Cometh. And they brought together it's a huge cast to begin with, about 45 to 50 people. And they hired an actor, Jason Robards Jr., who at the time was regarded as one of Broadway's most brilliant actors, and to take the lead. And they started rehearsing with Jose Quintero, a great, great director. And they go into rehearsal, and immediately there are serious problems in that Jason is a strict method actor who wanted to do things on a different level than the way it was staged originally. He didn't like the staging to begin with, and he let Jose Quintero know. And he started restaging on his own, which meant that you've got a cast of anything from 20 to 35, 40 people on stage, and they're expecting Jason to come down stage left, and Jason is not down stage left. He pops up down stage right and comes in, and the actors get a little uneasy because they're not ready for that cue and that movement. Anyway, this continues to happen. Jason is redoing so many things, being spontaneous, flexible, you might say, beyond flexibility. And the cast started to really get down on this. And finally, this is an equity cast, and there are equity rules, equity being the actors' union. And the cast sent some team to sit with Jose, and they said to Jose, we cannot go on this way. We can't stage this effectively, you know. We understand Jason is the lead, but we're all part of this. We've got contracts, and we want to be able to perform like, you know, the actors we are, but we can't do it the way Jason has got to stop this, or else we will go to equity, and it might mean we walk out, and, you know, you've got an opening date and brand new theater. Do something, please. So Jose was caught in the middle of this thing, and he called in Jason to explain the situation. And Jason said, all right, bring the cast together, let me talk with them. And Jason stood before the cast and said, I'm sorry we're experiencing this. I understand what you're talking about. I know it's not easy. And this is what I offer. Go along with me for 1 week. Do exactly, do my way. Just as difficult as it may seem, please go along with me my way and do it for 1 week without complaint. Really work at it though. Don't be doing it begrudgingly, you know, and just to see if the week can go by and then you can go and then, you know, quit. Just please, 1 week, give me, do it with me. Do it with me 1 week, please. And everyone looked around. Okay. Make a long story short, they began to do it. And sure enough, as they started to do it, as they gained that freedom of flexibility and began to really be method performers and to understand what Jason was trying to get out of this play, the spontaneity that it needed, it started to happen magically. The complaints faded away, play opened. It was supposed to run for 9 months, ran for 3.5 years, standing room only. Yeah, so the flexibility as part of the creativity always. At work and whatever you're doing. If you're too rigid, you're going to lose it. So it's a matter of working on that plot in your life and finding ways of doing it. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. You've got to actually create those things as you're going along. And again, if you're thinking like the actor, it becomes so much easier. The whole idea of creation becomes so much easier when you're thinking like the actor, because you are thinking in terms of theme, plot, resolution, dealing with conflicts. Somebody else?
So I think I said in the beginning I wasn't sure what Make Every Day a Work of Art meant to me. And I think now it really feels kind of like the framework or the blueprint of life to be happy. Some of the key things is I just started stretching. I did that this morning and it felt awesome, and I can't wait to continue to build upon that. Also today, I was struggling with the giving and feeling like I wasn't receiving, and I was frustrated about that. And to see without expecting to receive back, once that got in my head, it ended that feeling, that frustration. So that was really nice. Also the relationship piece of it, to be in relationships that just with friends that aren't as healthy as they should be, and to recognize that and to move on, or to make a move in that sense, to really do, not just think about it. So I think that's what it means to me now, and I'm really excited to use all of these things going forward.
Because you covered a lot of ground there.
I'm a fast talker.
Great, wonderful. The idea, again, of doing and giving without expectation is so vital to the uphold of existence. All too often, we are looking for the reward, the payback. That's what creates that I'll go 50, you go 50 kind of mentality. You know?
It's part of capitalism.
Of course, absolutely part of the culture. And it drowns our culture, and it drowns us as individuals. We're sinking in that. Always bookkeeping mentalities, as opposed to giving and loving, and you know, that's where you get all the goodies, not the other way around. And it's so hard for people to learn that. And you're right about it's part of the society, absolutely. That's materialism, that's capitalism, that's the whole structure, you know, is based on that. And what a grand mistake it is. The stretching thing, in 2 weeks we'll go over that. And as I've told people, and I'll just say it quickly here again, of all the things going on in my life personally, all the good, wonderful things, and there are 30, 40, 50 of those things, the love of family, of my life, of health, of everything. The most important element in my life, above and beyond anything, is stretching. Now someone might look at that and say, well, 1 second, now you're saying that's even more important than love? If I did not have stretching up here with the meaning that it needs to have, I would not be as fit as I am, as healthy as I am. I would not be able to sustain my love relationships the way I'm capable of. In fact, I'll be a burden to myself and other people. That's part of the unfit culture, unhealthy culture. So by focusing and saying, stretching, just like you said, absolutely, you have to know what upholds your existence. Stretching is what does it for me. It keeps me limber, active, healthy, alive, loose, free, able to sing, dance, move about. So you have to recognize how those things work in your life. And sometimes love is not the only thing. But what affects the love is most important. You've got to be healthy to really love. So, yeah, those are all vital things, and you've got to see each one of those things as being very, very important, not just some idea that sounds good, that sounds clever or workable. Apply, apply, apply. Do. Action, always. Somebody else?
So I'm curious about the progressive relaxation. I think you mentioned stretching and breathing, and so I'd like to hear about.
We're going to do
more.
progressive relaxation, and I think 3 or 4 weeks we're actually going to go through it for the entire session. Progressive relaxation is the portal to hypnosis, as I teach it, as I do it. It involves 3 elements: 1, language; 2, breathing; and 3, actually relaxing the entire body from head to toe. Each of these elements is important in and of itself, and you can practice each one individually, or you can work at them collectively. And the net result is you can learn to relax and focus on relaxation, or use it to meditate, or to get you into hypnosis. But we are going to go through the whole thing. It runs about 45 minutes to do the whole thing. We did a small portion of it earlier with the breathing, and that was only a small portion of the breathing idea. Filling your lungs to capacity, and then slowly letting that air out and letting it all out. But we're going to do progressive relaxation in its full way. But I can't do it now because it is another 45-minute chunk. I don't want to be bingo. Someone else?
Yeah, so, I've been working on this, and, I'm not there yet. So I feel like, when you talk about the mosaic and integration, there's certain parts that I've gotten better, and other parts, of course, that I need to work more on. And I feel like, I've incorporated many things, but like getting all the way to work of art, like I don't use those words. I think most of the time, I can see how, I'll think about other things that I need to do with my life or my day. But I can see that, as you said, that the actual using the words, that I think will really take it to a different level. And I've also noticing, like, I'm really working on my productivity in my life right now, which is my weakness. But I noticed as I've been, really being more productive that some of the other things slide a little bit. Like I had been working on giving and a number of other things in my life, and now that I'm really working on productivity, I notice like I'm not quite as good with my interactions with people and things like that. So I have to, work on balancing it out.
And that term, balance and adjustment, is another tool, another concept that's central to the overall concept, because every time you change something over here, you've got to balance and adjust somewhere else. It's like a script, very much like a script. Change one line in the first act of the play, and that's going to affect the entire play. So you've got to, okay, well, change that line, now I've got to adjust the rest of the script to that change. So it's a natural part of it. And don't be surprised by it. Always assume that it's going to take some balancing and adjusting in another area. And there are only 24 hours in the day. You've only got one body. You've only got one mind. So you've got to find the right thing. And you ask yourself always with saying, and to mention again the idea of the words. The actual language is so important. I can't stress this enough. The language must meet the demands of the need of the situation. If the language is not strong enough, it means you're not giving your mind enough of the proper fuel. It's like working on low octane instead of high octane. Uphold of existence. Those words are powerful. What upholds my existence? A lot of people have tried to reframe those words, to their own convenience. And I'll tell them, no, please don't. They were formed by a master, the most brilliant mind of the 20th century came up with those words. It works. Don't change the words. Make every day a work of art. Simple, clear, artistic, acting, action-oriented. You can change it to a why. The words work. Stick with the words that work. Always. Don't use weaker language in place of something that is much more powerful, that will make you move more. I can't stress that enough. Really focus on those words. It's so darn important. Every single one of them. That when you apply these concepts and tools, the language is part of it. To be redundant, language fuels the mind. Each word has a meaning, and when the meaning is strong and powerful, that means the mind is going to be aggressive. It's going to be far-reaching, moving all over the place, opening up new challenges. I strongly believe that much of what we call dementia, especially those forms that are not caused from beating on the head, as football players get the concussions, and the boxers get their brains rattled around. But much of what we experience in our society that we call dementia is self-induced in many ways, because the brain cells that are still alive, that have not died, are not charging. They're not there. In Dullsville, they're sinking in mud. They're just lying there. They're not doing anything. And a great part of that is because the language does not inspire the mind to really be active enough. The mind should be growing, should be expanding constantly. I'm asked frequently by people, as you've gotten older, Nick, has your memory decreased? No, it's stronger than ever. No. You can keep working and building. They tell us that when brain cells die, they're not replaced. Well, I'm not sure if that's a fact. Scientifically, I don't necessarily buy into that one. But even, let's give it the barest that when the brain cells die, they are not replaced. We're only left with a number of brain cells. How are we using them? What's happening to those brain cells? It's energy. It's got to have energy. What happens when we don't use our muscles?
Atrophy.
Right, exactly. What makes anyone think that that is not happening in the brain? Why do we have to use the term dementia, to make it sound like we can't deal with it, as opposed to you can induce much more, you can recover much more, you can enliven, but you've got to do it. You've got to do it. And unfortunately, we do not have the skills or the intent to do that. Whether you go to a regular physician or naturopathic physician, they don't have the tools. They've done so little work overall on things like dementia and what really happens with the mind, unfortunately. But I can tell you, Again, I'm 76 this week. My mind is stronger than ever. My memory is stronger than ever. You have to do it, though. You actually have to be using the mind. And the language is what does it. Language, words, phrases, sentences, attitudes, beliefs, values that work with the mind, are always expanding, expanding, expanding. I'm learning more and more every day about so many of the things that I've been working on for decades. And I can feel that you got to do it, do it, do it, and do it. So, anyone else?
Just on that, I think expectation. We have a culture that is constantly just looking at itself from the past, you know, and when expectation was that age, you were going to die at what, 70 or something. And so expectation was, why bother? We also have the school education system, which is about plugging you into a job and a career rather than creating a life. So we have these expectations that kind of short circuit our thinking capacity, and I think we're now getting past that. We're going, screw that. You know, that was...
We should be getting past it, we should, but the learning cycle with people is very restricted. It really requires an individualistic approach to living and sharing, right? But your main point there that I want to go on a little bit more, most people, for the reasons you pointed out, go through school and arrive at a very early point, way before they're ready to make decisions about their life. And they're put in a position where they have to decide what they're going to do. So the focus is always on what are you going to do. I recall very painfully almost every one of my friends' parents at one time or another saying something along the lines of, I'll be so glad when they grow up and they're out of the house. It's like they even talked about the number 18 or 19. You know? And that always disturbed me. And I didn't even, when I was 15 and 16, I felt just something inside of me was unhappy, was just made, what do you want, you know? It's like putting a pressure, you know? And I didn't realize intellectually what that was because I didn't realize that so much pressure was being put on people to plan their lives in the future. And it always revolved around what are you going to do, not who are you going to be, not your personality and character and your values, which should determine in great part eventually what you'll decide to do, but it's the other way around. So everyone's focused on what they do. Apropos of that, my daughter does a lot, one of my daughters do a lot of traveling, and Jenny went to Italy a couple of years back, and she grew up in Europe. And she came back and she was sitting with me and said, in Europe, Italy, England, Greece, when I'm there, I meet people. You know, we could be sitting having coffee and someone at another table here that will speak English and speak, and then and so you meet people frequently and much easier. And when you meet the people, you get into who you are, you know? You exchange feelings and, you know, ideas, and you really get to know people. She said, and I come back here, and I meet anyone, and all that happens is, what do you do? What do you do? And that's the topic of conversation. What do you do? Not, you know, yeah, it's a great, great weakness in our society, and it doesn't exist everywhere else. And other people really care about who you are and want to know you, as opposed to what you do alone. Yeah, and that takes away from the uphold of existence and making every day a work of art completely. And it just gives you all the negative leverage and all the negative language, and you focus on that. Of course you lost that. And there's not enough of a model out there to change. We're surrounded by ignorance and by people who are going in the wrong direction. So that's another part of it, is that we do not have the models we need. I look back when I was a child, during the Depression and the war years, if you were to sit with almost anyone above the age of 6 or 7 and asked them about world personalities and people who were examples of what life should be about and what the world should be about, they would come up with at least a dozen names of models in the world. Even in America, we had Eleanor Roosevelt, the greatest of the models. We had models all over the world. Today, the last of them perhaps is Nelson Mandela. He's still alive. But who else? Who else can you name that really strikes you as a model for humanity, for what we should be reaching for? There's not one I know of in this country. I'm sure there are models, I know that. But in terms of real people that we know of and that are in the public life, who do we have? We have a bunch of bums. You know, lawyers and politicians, people who have no understanding of life and of concepts, who give us lies upon lies upon lies, so they're the models, all negative models. The only hope is to be a model yourself. Make that your commitment to life, be a model. You may not affect the world, but you'll affect your own life, the people around you, perhaps your community. Become a model. As simple as that, because we only have what we have. Faced with that reality ourselves. In conclusion, again, make every day a work of art. Wake up in the morning with that idea in mind. I'm going to make this day a work of art. Think of Bob Embry. Think about the models that you've had in life. Think about the models that you've known of. Be aware of what upholds your existence. Use that language. Say yes, be kind. Do all the things to create the leverage you need. And use the language you need. And just build it and build it and build it each and every day. Really work at making every day a work of art. Don't just think about it. Do action.
From God's on board, each day I dine. From the Bering Straits to Palestine. This spring, this brook will ring the bell. No need of wealth, you're in God's hotel. Go world, roll on, this whole world over. Happy as me, you'll never see. Go world, roll on, this whole world over. Happy as me, you'll never see.
One should know though was Christ's motto, so do the same. Let heaven flow. No pills, no